They say a man doesn't truly know what he's made of until he's been broken. I always thought that was just poetic nonsense, something people said to sound wise over whiskey. Then again, I used to think a lot of things. My name's Grant Mason. I'm 42. And 3 months ago, I found out that the woman I married, whom I built a life with, wasn't just stepping out on me. She'd built an entire parallel existence without me even noticing. Or maybe I just didn't want to see it. Funny thing about betrayal, it doesn't scream. It whispers. And my first whisper came from the smell of cologne. She came home late from book club, which I later found out was a euphemism for things that don't involve books. I greeted her at the door with a kiss on the cheek, like I always did. That's when I smelled it. Not her usual vanilla and cedar perfume. No, this was muskier, masculine, arrogant, new scent. I asked casually. She blinked. What? You smell different. Oh, I tried a new shampoo. Now, let me tell you something about shampoo. It doesn't smell like betrayal unless it's imported in the backseat of a stranger's BMW. I didn't push. I just nodded, made a mental note, and let it simmer. I didn't want to believe it, not then. That's the thing about us stubborn types. We'll swallow barbed wire before admitting we've been fooled. But that night, as she showered and hummed to herself, I went to our shared laptop and checked her emails. She was still logged in. A message blinked at the top of her inbox. Subject line: last night was unforgettable, face-blowing kiss. Now, I'm no private detective, but I don't need a magnifying glass to see what's hiding in plain sight. I didn't open the email. Not then. Instead, I closed the laptop, poured myself a drink, and sat in the dark for an hour, listening to the water run upstairs. The hiss of betrayal echoing off bathroom tiles. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd open that email. I didn't know then that tomorrow would be the beginning of the end. In the end, well, the end would be a very different story. The next morning, I poured my coffee like it was any other day. She kissed me on the cheek, same as always, and called over her shoulder, "Don't forget, dinner at my parents' tomorrow." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. But I already knew I wouldn't be going. Once she was out the door, I opened the laptop. Inbox. Click. Subject line: last night was unforgettable, face-blowing kiss. It wasn't a name I recognized. Just a first name, Evan. Evan. I said it out loud, just to feel it. It tasted like copper and smoke. The message was short, but it didn't need to be long. Still thinking about the way you looked when you said you weren't going back to him. Hope that's still true. Call me when you're free. I'll be counting the minutes. There it was. Not just a betrayal of the body, but of intention. She wasn't just straying. She was planning a future. One I wasn't part of. I stared at the screen until the cursor stopped blinking. Then I printed the email and folded it like origami, precision creases, no emotion. By noon, I'd gone through 6 more messages. Some were flirty. Others were cruel. One had a photo attached. Not that kind of photo, thankfully, just the two of them at a beach. I hadn't known she'd taken that trip to visit her sister. Apparently, Evan liked sunsets and my wife liked his camera. I didn't call her. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I did what I always do when I'm hurt. I cleaned the garage. By the time I finished organizing every wrench, cord, and box of nails, I had a plan. Because when your life gets hijacked, you either sit in the back seat and cry, or you learn how to hotwire the damn car. And me? I've always been good with tools. The thing about being betrayed is, it makes you suspicious of everything, even your memories. That evening, she came home chirping about how Evan from work, had gotten promoted. Isn't that great for him? She asked, smiling like she hadn't been wrapped around him 72 hours ago. Yeah, I said. Good for Evan. She paused mid-pasta stir, turned, and looked at me. You okay? I gave her the same smile I wore at our wedding. The one that said I'd do anything for her, even bury the truth if it kept her happy. Just tired. But I wasn't tired. I was awake for the first time in years. That night, while she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and ran through every lie she'd told. Every "I love you" spoken with someone else's name on her breath. In the morning, I called in sick. I told my boss I had the flu. What I had was far worse. It was clarity. I hired a private investigator. Guy named Owen, mid-50s, wore aviators indoors, and carried a coffee thermos that probably held 3 types of bourbon. His office smelled like dust and truths people didn't want to hear. What do you want me to find? He asked. Everything, I said. Owen nodded like he'd heard that before. Any idea where she might be meeting him? Her work. His office. Maybe our guest bathroom for all I know. He cracked a smile. All right. Give me a week. He only needed 4 days. When he called, it was with that calm, neutral tone men use when they're about to hit you in the face with a hammer wrapped in velvet. I've got pictures. Restaurant. Motel. His apartment. They're not shy. I didn't ask for the pictures, but I accepted them, and I printed every single one. They weren't obscene. Nothing that would make a lawyer blush. Just enough to show the court, and me, that love letters weren't the only thing she was signing. That night, she asked if I wanted to try that new Italian place on Main Street. Can't, I said, without looking up from the folder. I've got plans. She didn't ask what kind. She noticed I'd changed. Not right away, of course. But by the end of the week, her eyebrows started twitching in that little tell she had when something didn't add up. The woman could smell inconsistency like a bloodhound on a scent trail. You're different, she said one morning while pouring her coffee. Everything okay? I gave her a switchblade smile, small, sharp, and just barely out. Better than ever. She tilted her head. That's good. You were just so tired before. I sipped my own coffee and held her gaze a second too long. She looked away first. That's when I knew. She felt the shift, even if she didn't know where the earthquake had started. Now, I didn't go full scorched earth right then. No, I'm not one of those guys who finds out and immediately throws everything in the front yard like a country song on fast forward. I'm a planner. Always have been. I made 2 to-do lists, one for ending the marriage, the other for ending the performance. Because that's what our life had become, a stage play with 2 lead actors who had stopped believing in the script. Step 1. Financial prep. I moved half our savings into a solo account under my name. Perfectly legal. I was careful. No overdraft, no sudden withdrawals. Just a quiet reshuffling, like reshelving books in a library. Step 2. Lawyer. I didn't want a fighter. I wanted a surgeon, precise, cold, and efficient. Enter Miss Rowan Green. No nonsense. No small talk. Just a firm handshake and the kind of eyes that made opposing counsel check their paperwork twice. She reviewed the evidence Owen had provided and nodded once. You're in a strong position, she said, flipping through the photos like a grocery catalog. Especially if we can prove cohabitation. Oh, they're practically domestic, I said. She's got a toothbrush at his place. Rowan arched an eyebrow. Any interest in reconciliation? I paused, thought about it. No, I said. Not unless reconciliation involves court-mandated amnesia. Rowan smirked. Fair enough. Step 3. Patience. See, revenge is like barbecue, low and slow. You can't rush it. You let it marinate. You keep the heat steady. And when the time's right, you serve it so hot and well done it peels the paint off the walls. While I planned, she kept up appearances. Date night suggestions. Laundry folded. Sweet nothings whispered with the enthusiasm of a dentist reading poetry. She was trying to patch the boat without knowing it had already sunk. One evening, she brought up the beach. Maybe we should go back to Destin this summer. You always said you loved it there. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that'd be nice. But in my mind, I was remembering the text I'd seen just that morning. From Evan. Last night was electric. You always look like the ocean belongs to you. So yeah, Destin. What a perfect place to watch her drown in her own fiction. That weekend, I made one more call, Owen, again. Need one last favor, I said. A picture. I want to be in it this time. You want to get caught? He asked, surprised. No, I said. I want to let her catch me. But on my terms. Because if there's one thing cheaters hate, it's a mirror. Especially one that talks back. 2 days later, I staged it. Nice rooftop bar. Golden hour lighting. A friend of mine, Lena, divorced, confident, and just the right amount of dangerous, agreed to help. She owed me a favor. I'd fixed her roof in a snowstorm, back when her ex had vanished. Owen snapped the picture right as she leaned in laughing, her hand brushing mine. We weren't even touching, but the angle made it look like a whisper away from scandal. Perfect. That night, I accidentally left my phone unlocked on the counter while I took a shower. She never could resist a buzzing screen. By the time I stepped out, she was standing in the hall, phone in hand, eyes wide with accusation. Who is she? She asked, voice shaking. I didn't answer. Just dried my hair with the towel like I hadn't noticed the fire in the hallway. I asked you a question, she said, louder. I looked at her, dead calm. Do you really want to have this conversation? Silence. That was new. She wasn't used to being on the back foot. Answer me, she snapped. So I did. She's someone who doesn't lie to me, I said. She's someone who doesn't make me feel like the second option in my own marriage. And she's someone who, until 5 minutes ago, didn't know I was still married. That last part was a lie, but it worked. Her jaw dropped like I'd slapped her with a subpoena. She threw the phone. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. "You hypocrite," she screamed. "I can't believe you do this." I stared at her. Let the silence grow until it was thick enough to choke on. "Really?" I said quietly. "You can't believe me? After Evan? After your beach getaway? After your late nights at work? I had to find your loyalty with a flashlight and a map." She froze. "You went through my messages?" "No," I said. "I went through our marriage. It was empty." She blinked. It hit her then. She wasn't the only one writing the ending. I walked past her, towel over my shoulder. "We're done," I said. "And not the way you planned it." She didn't scream after that. She didn't cry, didn't beg. She just stood there in the hallway, barefoot on hardwood, staring at me like I'd flipped the script mid-scene. Which, to be fair, I had. For the next few days, the house felt sterile. Like we were two strangers stuck in a real estate listing. We moved around each other with the grace of coworkers who just found out the company was folding. Everything was polite, measured, hollow. She didn't ask about Lena again. And I didn't bring up Evan. The silence wasn't cold. It was clinical. I still cooked. She still did laundry. But there was no eye contact, no small talk, no pretending. And I think that scared her more than yelling ever could. On Wednesday, I came home to find her at the dining room table, a thick manila folder in front of her. "I went to see a lawyer," she said, not looking up. I walked past her, hung my keys on the hook, took my time. "I figured," I replied. "I didn't think it would come to this," she said quietly. I almost laughed. Didn't think? What? Was she hoping I'd just dissolve into the wallpaper like a polite ghost? She slid the folder toward me. "They said we can make this as clean as we want. Uncontested. No court appearances." I picked up the folder, thumbed through it. Boilerplate divorce docs. The kind they give couples who pretend they still care about each other's dignity. Then I noticed the numbers. She'd listed our assets, the proposed split. It was generous. More than fair, actually. "I want to make this right," she said, finally meeting my eyes. I paused, looked at her for a long time, and for a second, I saw the girl I'd married. Not the woman who lied or the woman who cheated, but the version of her who once sat beside me in the back seat of my dad's rusted-out pickup, legs curled under her, telling me we'd build something better than our parents ever had. The girl who believed in us. But she was gone now. "You can't make this right," I said gently. "You can only stop making it worse." She nodded, eyes glossy but not spilling. She didn't get the satisfaction of tears. Not from me, and not from herself. At least she had that kind of restraint. "I'll sign," I said. "But I'm keeping the house." That made her flinch. Just a twitch. "But..." I held up a hand. "You're the one who wanted out. You don't get the keys too." She didn't argue. She just nodded again and quietly said, "Okay." By Friday, the papers were signed. Rowan, my lawyer, called it shockingly efficient. I called it closure with a side of emotional whiplash. Now all that was left were the logistics. She moved out the following week, 3 duffel bags, a pair of suitcases, and a silence that weighed more than any of it. No big farewell, no hugging old furniture goodbye. Just, "I'll have the movers get the rest." I didn't say goodbye. Just watched her drive off in the car we co-signed, tail lights blinking like a fading heartbeat. And then, the quiet settled in. Not the uncomfortable kind, but the good kind. The kind that lets you hear yourself think. I stood in the kitchen that night, beer in hand, staring out the window. The backyard hadn't changed. Still the same fence, same grill, same cracked patio stones from that one time she tripped during a barbecue and we laughed until our ribs hurt. But it felt different. Like the house had finally taken a deep breath for the first time in years. And then, something unexpected happened. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Message: "You don't know me, but I think we should talk. Evan isn't who you think he is." I stared at the screen, thought about ignoring it. I'd already collected my pain, already stitched up the wound. But something about that message pulled at a thread I hadn't realized was still loose. So I texted back. "Who is this?" 3 dots. A pause. Then, "Name's Brooke. I'm Evan's ex. And he has a habit of targeting married women." I stared at the message, that old instinct kicking in. The same one that made me check emails, watch patterns, follow inconsistencies. I called Owen. "Got one more job for you," I said. He chuckled. "You don't even say hello anymore." "What am I? Your private spy on retainer?" "Pretty much," I said. "You still got that file on Evan?" "Of course." I keep archives. Good. I want to add to it. Ah, Owen said. We going for a post-game show? I looked out the window again, voice calm as rain on a roof. No. We're going for the encore. Owen's office smelled like cigarette ashes and secrets. He didn't smoke, but his file cabinet might have lit a few up on its own over the years. I sat across from him as he flipped through the manila folder marked E. Carter. Evan Carter, 35, marketing consultant. 2-year gap in his employment history. Suspicious social media patterns. Multiple aliases for rental properties. Guy's clean on the surface, Owen said, tapping the folder. But dig a little and you find mold under the tile. I nodded. Tell me about Brooke. He pulled another folder from his drawer. Brooke Chambers, ex-fiancée. Called it off 6 months before the wedding. Guess why? I didn't have to. Owen handed me a photo, Evan with another woman. Different than my ex, different than Brooke. Same smirk, though. That I get away with everything grin. She left him after she found out he was seeing a married woman, Owen said. Turns out, that was habit number 3. He's got a type. Naive. I asked. Married, Owen replied. Naive is just a bonus. I stared at the photo. The guy had a pattern. Insert himself into someone's marriage, widget open like a crowbar, and then slide into the space left behind. I leaned back. You think he targets them? Absolutely, Owen said. Charm's part of the act. He's not just sleeping with women. He's hunting them. That made my spine stiffen. My wife wasn't an accident. She was a mark. It didn't change the betrayal, but it shifted the narrative. It wasn't just that she cheated. It was that she got played. And I was collateral damage in a game I never agreed to play. You think Brooke's telling the truth? I asked. She's angry, Owen said. But not crazy. You want to meet her? Yeah, I said. I do. We met at a neutral spot, a coffee shop halfway between broken promises and fresh starts. Brooke was tall, sharp-eyed, mid-30s. She wore a leather jacket and that kind of quiet confidence that said she'd walked through fire and wasn't impressed by matches anymore. You must be Grant, she said, sliding into the booth. I nodded. And you're the one who left the fox before he raided the next hen house. She smirked. Cute. I like that. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a small notebook. He keeps a log, she said, flipping it open. Every woman, every alias he used, every time frame. Found this in a drawer before I left. Didn't take it at first, felt like theft. But later, it felt like evidence. I looked at the names. My wife's name wasn't there, but the dates matched. Right around the time she started volunteering for weekend events at her company. He's methodical, I said. Very, she replied. He likes to find women who feel overlooked. Wives who want excitement. He makes them feel seen. Then he makes them disappear. How many? I asked. 17, she said. That I know of. I whistled softly. Guy's basically a con artist with a gym membership. She chuckled, but there was bitterness beneath it. Yeah, and you know what he does after? He ghosts them. Moves on like they were just pit stops. The women end up wrecked. Half of them try to crawl back to their husbands. I raised an eyebrow. And how many are taken back? Less than you'd think. I tapped the notebook. You ever think of going public with this? I did, she said. But it sounds like a soap opera. Nobody wants to hear about emotional hit-and-runs unless someone's bleeding. I leaned forward. What if I made sure someone bled? She tilted her head. Not physically, I hope. I smiled. Oh, no. I'm not stupid. I don't want jail. I want closure with interest. She raised her coffee cup. To that. That night, I started planning the second half of the encore. It began with a party. A fake one. A business networking event that Evan couldn't resist. Carefully crafted digital invites, real venue, catered, nothing over the top, just enough polish to look legit. Owen created the alias. Brooke helped refine the guest list. My ex? She got a personal invite from a client Evan had been trying to impress. We made it irresistible, a VIP list of local influencers, brands, investors, and a dress code, of course. Evan arrived in a blazer and the same smile he wore in every photo. She followed close behind, dressed to kill. He had his arm around her like he'd just won something valuable at a silent auction. I stayed in the wings, watching them through the security cameras we'd set up in the lounge. Owen was nearby, pretending to bartend. Brooke mingled like she was born for it. And at 7:35 p.m., right on cue, we dropped the video. A compilation. Evan with woman number 3. Then number 7. Then number 12. Then number 15. Each clip played on a loop, muted, just enough to show the intimacy, the repetition, the routine. The crowd hushed. Faces turned. Heads tilted. Evan froze. My ex looked like she'd been slapped by a dozen ghosts. Owen stepped forward, lifted a microphone. Looks like our featured speaker's been a little too social. No yelling. No chaos. Just one long, slow silence as Evan stood there, exposed. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. He bolted 5 minutes later. She stayed frozen for 15. Brooke walked over, handed her the notebook, and left without saying a word. When I got home, I poured a glass of bourbon and sat on the porch. I wasn't happy. Not exactly. But I was lighter. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come in courtrooms or revenge flicks. Sometimes, it comes in the form of knowing that the person who lit the match has finally tasted the smoke. And the house? It didn't burn down. I just took the fire with me when I left. The fallout didn't hit like a bomb. It came down like ash. Quiet. Persistent. Coating everything. For the first few days after the networking event, my ex didn't contact me. I figured she was recalibrating, trying to rewrite the story in her head where she was the victim. That's what people like her do when the narrative starts slipping out of their hands. Evan, from what Owen told me, had vanished. Deleted social media, changed his number, probably trying to fade into some other city where wives hadn't yet been briefed on his habits. Like a roach running when the kitchen light flips on. But karma doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs a good memory. Then, on a drizzly Thursday morning, the doorbell rang. I opened the door expecting Amazon. It was her. Hair tied back. No makeup. Hoodie over sweatpants. The same outfit she wore the night her grandmother died, like grief had become her wardrobe again. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped aside. Not because I owed her anything, but because closure sometimes needs an audience. She sat on the edge of the couch like she didn't recognize it anymore. "I didn't know," she said. "About the other women. About Evan's pattern." I nodded slowly. "You didn't ask, either." She winced. "That's not fair." "It's accurate," I replied, sitting across from her. "You saw what you wanted to see. A fantasy. A new beginning. But the foundation was quicksand, and you ran into it barefoot." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Good." It meant the gears were finally grinding through reality. "I left you because I felt unseen," she said. Evan made me feel lit up. "Yeah," I said. "So does a flare. But flares burn out. And usually they mean someone's in trouble." Her eyes watered, but no tears fell. That was the thing about her, always on the verge of emotion, but never quite letting it spill. Everything in her world was carefully curated, even grief. "I'm sorry," she whispered. And here's the thing. Part of me believed her. I believe she regretted the fallout. I believe she missed the version of us we used to be. But I didn't believe she would have ever stopped unless Evan turned out to be who he really was, a fraud. That's not love. That's regret with a guilty conscience. "I'm not," I said. She blinked. "You're not sorry?" "No," I said, leaning forward. "I'm not sorry for what I did. I'm not sorry I exposed him. I'm not sorry I stopped letting you lie to my face every night while I paid the mortgage and cooked your favorite damn chicken Alfredo like a fool." Her lips parted, stunned. "Grant, I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did," I said. "Not just by cheating, but by letting it become a performance. You were giving curtain calls while I was still in the audience, clapping like an idiot." She looked down. "I thought we'd grow old together." I stood up. "We did," I said. "I just did it faster." That night, I boxed up the last of her things, what little she hadn't taken when she moved out. It wasn't much. A few books. A sweater she used to wear when it got cold enough to justify cuddling. A framed picture of us from a trip to Asheville, before either of us had started pretending. I didn't burn it. I'm not that guy. But I did leave it in the garage with a note. "Your history's out here. I'm keeping the future inside." Then I locked the door and poured myself another drink. A week passed. Then another. Then I got a letter. Real mail. Handwritten. No return address, but the handwriting was hers. You don't spend 13 years with someone and not recognize the way they loop their Ys like music notes. Inside, 2 pages. Lined paper. A pen that ran out halfway through the second paragraph. I didn't read it right away. Let it sit on the table while I ate, while I watched a movie, while I stared at the ceiling fan for an hour. Then, finally, I opened it. Asterisk Grant. I wanted to say this without interruption, without the weight of your stare or the sound of your disappointment. You were always a good man, better than I deserved. That's not just something people say when they're trying to make peace. It's the truth. I don't know why I did what I did. Not really. Maybe because I wanted to feel young again. Maybe because I thought something new would fix something old. But I broke something beautiful trying to build something imaginary. I watched that video 3 times after you sent it to me. Not because I was in denial, but because I needed to see myself. I needed to see what I looked like next to him. And I looked lost. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you know that somewhere in all this ruin, I did love you. M***. I folded the letter slowly, neatly, set it in a drawer next to the warranty for our refrigerator. Somehow, it belonged there, proof of things once meant to last. I started running again. Not from anything. Just around the block. Cleared my head. Some days, I found myself thinking about Brooke. About how 2 strangers collided through betrayal and somehow walked out a little less broken. We texted now and then. Mostly dry humor. Sarcasm was our love language, apparently. Then one day, she messaged, "You ever feel like you burned the wrong house down?" I stared at the screen. Then replied, "No. I just learned I never built one with fire exits." She replied with a laughing emoji. "We're meeting for coffee next week." Not a date. Not yet. Just 2 survivors comparing notes. Because healing isn't about pretending it never happened. It's about owning the scars like medals. And me? I've got a chest full of them. The first time Brooke and I met for coffee after the fallout, we didn't talk about Evan. Not once. We talked about weather. Favorite takeout spots. The new movie neither of us had seen. 2 people reclaiming their time, like survivors clearing rubble to find what parts of the foundation were still good. She asked about the house. I told her I'd finally taken down the framed quote my ex loved, some Pinterest nonsense about love being patient. Brooke laughed. Patience is just the waiting room for fools when it comes to love. She wasn't bitter. Just precise. She said it like someone who'd finally stopped trying to fix things that weren't broken, just fake. That night, I sat on my back porch and realized I felt peace. Not happiness, not yet, but peace, which is a kind of happiness that doesn't wear makeup. Then came the letter from Evan. Yes, him. Typed. No signature. Just initials, EC. Like he thought this was some courtroom drama and not a very real ending to a very real trail of destruction. It read, "You and I both know she wasn't yours by the time I came along. Maybe you want to feel like a hero for embarrassing me, but in the end, you didn't win anything. You just proved what everyone eventually learns: monogamy is dead, and pretending otherwise makes fools of us all." There was no apology. Just projection. Just the smug voice of a man who confuses cynicism for intelligence. I didn't respond, but I printed it, framed it, hung it in my garage right above the breaker box. So every time I flip a switch, I remember what darkness sounds like in a tuxedo. 6 months later, the house felt different. Not because I redecorated, because the air was mine again. I ran into my ex one more time. At the grocery store. She was holding a box of cereal I used to buy. We locked eyes across the aisle. She gave me that half-smile people give when they remember something they miss but know they can't have. I just nodded. No wave. No conversation. Just a silent agreement between 2 people who burned down a future and walked away holding nothing but smoke and paperwork. Brooke and I? Still not official. We meet. We talk. We laugh. She brings her own piece to the table. Doesn't try to fix me. Doesn't try to be fixed. Some nights, we sit in silence and it doesn't feel empty. It feels earned. And me? I'm still here. Still standing. Not because I got revenge. Not because I exposed a cheater. But because I finally stopped living in the ashes. I carry fire now, not to burn, but to warm. And if anyone ever asks me how I survived the worst year of my life, I'll tell them this. With silence. With clarity. With just enough humor to keep from screaming. And one well-placed match.